In this session we're going to talk about the orbital sander. Now, the orbital sander is, as its name implies, sands or smooths the material by the pad of the sander moving in an orbital fashion from side to side around like that. Unlike the belt sander, which has a belt that rotates underneath and goes with the grain, this actually sands across the grain just a little bit. Okay, so that's the orbital sander, and that's how it works. This is what we call a half-sheet sander, because that relates back to the old days, really, when we used to buy sandpaper in sheet sizes, and this would have been a half sheet. So you torn your half sheet into two, and you would then fit it onto the machine. And to do that, you've got two little clips, one at either end, one at the back here, just there. One little clip at the back, and of course one little clip at the front, just there. And you would take the paper, wrap it underneath there, and onto the back. However, with this machine, this also has a hook and eye type of fastening. And just underneath here, this is the eye side, and the hooks are on the belt. And underneath, there's some small holes. And these small holes locate the screws for fastening the pad to the underneath of the machine, and also provide air holes for the dust that the machine produces to be sucked up into the dust collection bag here at the back. To actually put the sanding pad underneath it, or the sanding paper underneath it, all we need to do is to get our paper, line it up with the holes, like so, and just stick it on. Just press it on like that. You can get a whole variety of different grits of paper to work on these machines. Something from around about 40 grit, or P40 grit, right up to a P1100 or 1200. For normal work that we do, you'll be looking round about 150 or P150 round to about P300. If you're going to do really, really high quality work, then an orbital sander is not the ideal tool, because of the orbital direction in which it sands. Some of the sanding will take place across the grain, and that will leave little score marks, little circles in the grain. So if you do use an orbital sander, you need to block it off at the end using a hand sanding block. That's if you're going to be producing a very fine, stained or highly polished surface. Okay? So that's a little bit about the underneath of the machine. Now, as with all machines, when you come to use it, do a quick check of the machine. Make sure that the body of the machine is in good condition and that there's no obvious damage to it anywhere. This one on the top, we've got a speed control, so we can adjust it to sand a variety of materials. And we've got a trigger down here. Again, we're going to check it, make sure that it's working correctly, which we can actually press a side button, which will hold it on all the time. To release it, stop it working, you simply click down the button underneath and just allow it to work like that. Okay? Now the next thing, again before we start, check the condition of the machine, of the actual cable I mean. Is there any damage on the cable anywhere? You know, work yourself along the cable, making sure that there's no areas where it could possibly be damaged or broken in any way. Just walk along there and make sure the plug is in good condition. This is a 240 volt machine. So we've got to be careful that we do plug it into the right kind of power source. Now, if you are using 240, you're allowed to use that on building sites, and you're allowed to use that in workshops, so long as the supply is protected by an RCD, residual current device, which, should there be any kind of fault develop in the circuit, it will automatically cut off the power supply, usually within 30 milliseconds. That's regarded as safe for personal use. Okay, so 240 machine, RCDs are important that we use them for that. So okay, so we're going to try and actually use this machine a little bit now, but before we do that, we've got to think about the PPE. Clearly there's going to be issues with dust from this machine, so we would use a dust mask, and there is some noise. It's probably below the sort of 85 dB action level, but nevertheless it's a really good idea to wear some earmuffs. Again, in terms of the plate on the machine, I've just thought about mentioning this. The double squares on the side here tell us that it's a doubly insulated machine, so there's not going to be an earth cable going into this plug. It's doubly insulated, and it gives us further information about how many volts it is, so we know what we're plugging it into, how many amps, how many wattage, what the wattage of the machine actually is. So the label on the side, we really need to know a little bit about that, just to make sure we're using the correct machine for the correct job. That's our machine. We can now just plug it in down the side here, because obviously we don't do anything, we don't adjust it or set it up in any way when the thing's turned on. Okay? So we plug it in. Now, if you are using an extension lead, for instance, try and choose a fairly short extension lead and make sure that it's fully unwound. That will stop the actual cable within the extension lead from overheating. If you use a large extension lead and draw a lot of power through it and leave it wound up, the chances are that over a period of time it'll start to generate heat within the cable roll, and that could actually cause it to melt and cause a fire, and in some cases possibly even electrocute the operator. So a good idea to unwind the cable fully. Right, I'm going to pop on a dust mask. A little bit more difficult when you're wearing glasses, but I think we'll give it a go. Here we are, dust mask on, and your earmuffs. When we use the machine, as you can see, we try and keep it moving all the time, gently over the wood. What we don't want to do is cause any large dents or hollows to start forming, or maintain it constantly sanding in one place, which could, for instance, sand through a very thin veneer. So we keep the thing moving all the time. That's true of the belt sander as well. Of course, with that machine, we do need to keep that moving over the wood at all times. If you leave that in one place for any period of time, you're likely to cause a slight indentation. Okay, that's all there is about the orbital sander. Thank you very much for watching.